Bucks done after Jimmy Butler put on back-to-back incredible playoff performances. Giannis, who sustained a back injury in Game 1, missed 2 games, then battled through. Not thrilled when asked if this season was considered a failure. Take a listen.
Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. Okay, because I'm not that up. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay. Do you get the promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, I don't know, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success, you know. And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it, you know. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure. That's what you're telling me. No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why are you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not.
I just want to say one thing. 2 things that I loved. I love the MJ example he had, but also when he got all heated and you could see how passionate he was, and then he stopped himself with the reporter where he didn't want to make it personal and do the whole, like, I played, you didn't. He's just such a good guy. Mm-hmm. It's just hard not to root for him. But let me ask you this, Jay. Do you agree that the Bucks season was not a failure?
I wouldn't say it was a failure. I would say it was a disappointment. Mm-hmm. To me, it proves how hard it is to win a championship. And I really want to dig into this opportunity here because I think it's a chance to kind of redirect and change the conversation. If you're a high school coach or a college coach or coach in intramural basketball or any sport, you need to make your kid watch that video, right? Because we would never tell a young person, oh, you didn't win the season, you were a favorite, you're a failure. Imagine saying that to a 16-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid, right? Steps toward success. Yeah. Michael Jordan has talked about this by saying, you know, all my losses were moments or opportunities for growth, moments for me to get better, to increase the desire. Was the season a disappointment? Sure it was. Do I think that Milwaukee, if he hadn't gotten hurt, would have lost like that to Miami? No. But that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Yeah. That's why we say there's luck from a player's perspective when Tom Brady goes for 6 or when Michael Jordan goes for whatever the number is guys are winning at a high level. So and I also kind of feel like media, we've created these absolutes. Well, it's either you do or you don't. You're a failure because that gets the clicks. That's a polarizing statement. That's something that millions of people hear, and fans and people who have their everyday jobs are like, yeah, you're right. His example was so great. Every year you don't get a bump or a salary raise, are you a failure? Let's use failure for real things. Are you a failure as a father? Are you a failure as a parent? That failure is way more applicable to things like that, where I look to change the conversation around, was it disappointing? Sure, Stephen A. But is it an opportunity for this team to grow? Are there things that Giannis can work on? Was it embarrassing? Yes, all these things are correct. Was it a failure? Wasn't a failure.
He was injured.
Wasn't a failure.
I would respectfully ask the both of you to listen to me right now because I get where you're coming from. And I'm not uttering a negative or insulting word about what you just said. It's not directed at what you just said because you're right with what you're saying. But your sentiments are misplaced. And let me explain why. Giannis wasn't wrong in terms of the season, but he was wrong in his answer about what happened in the postseason. The Milwaukee Bucks had the best record in the Eastern Conference. They had championship aspirations. And they went home in 5 games. That last game that they lost, And Giannis, I hope he's listening somewhere. I'm a huge fan of Giannis because I think Giannis is the kind of international superstar all of sports needs because he never cheats. He always goes out there and competes at the highest level. He never cheats the game. He doesn't cheat himself. He doesn't cheat his teammates. He doesn't cheat the sport. He is an absolute treasure to the sport. But I even want him to understand this. You lose in a game 5, a closeout game of a playoff series. You go to the free throw line and you miss 13 free throws. That's incredibly alarming. That is not something that is normal. It doesn't happen very often, okay? The coach with his collapse. And we all know how great that Budenholzer is a great coach. He's a champion. The collapse over the last 2 games, that's problematic. How old some of their players suddenly looked in the throes of pressure as the pressure waned in the waning moments of the previous 2 games. That matters. And when you ask the question, yes, the reporter might have generalized it, and Giannis wasn't at fault for what he said because he said it. Remember what he said? You asked me this last year. So he remembered who the guy was and that the question was identical, and he's attaching a different meaning to it. But the point is, if you had asked, when he asked the question about Michael Jordan, ask Michael Jordan, did he fail? He would have told you yes. We don't think he would have because you can't win every year. Nobody does. But he would have told you he failed. Ask Kobe. You know him. I know him. God rest his wonderful soul. He would have told you he failed. So what I'm saying to you is that when you're around these guys and they give you the definition of what defines success and failure for them, and then the moment arrives and you ask that question, specifically as it pertains to what I just said, because overall he's not a failure, of course not. But specifically what I said, this playoffs, what these expectations were for this team. If Sacramento loses to Golden State, that's not a failure. The expectations weren't there. They've exceeded expectations already. If the Lakers lose in the second round of Golden State, it's not a failure. We weren't expecting the Lakers to be there. Okay? But if Kevin Durant and KD had got bounced out in the first round without Kawhi there, we would have said it was a failure. Because expectations come with it based on what your capabilities are, based on what your resume, meaning this season, this position you're in, says.
I have to
all of those
push
things
back
come
on
in.
one thing.
Sure.
It's 5 games.
Yes.
Game 1 goes out. Game 2,
Yes.
gone.
Yeah.
Game
Game
3,
three, gone.
Game 4, you think he's 100% healthy?
No. He was grimacing. He was grimacing while he was sitting down on the bench.
I don't even understand how we
explain
can
that.
ask him that. He wasn't there.
And by the way,
Hold
there's
on.
a difference between
Miami wouldn't have
you
won.
failed a test as opposed to the question was, is your season a failure?
I agree with that because,
even
again,
get on
the
the
question
court.
that was asked from a macro perspective, he's absolutely right to feel the way that he feels for the season. But for the postseason, remember this, you're talking about the 2 games, really it's 3 games. We only played
I'm just really talking about this
I know that.
series.
You only played the first 11 minutes of
Yes.
game 1.
Yes.
Yes.
But remember, without him, they won. Was it game 2?
Game 2, they smacked him.
They smacked him around without him.
Yeah.
And then when he came back, it wasn't his fault, but it was a collapse by the people around him. Right? Because we talked about Budenholzer and all these things. And then last night, he had 38 and 20. But let me tell you something. I don't care who you are in the game of basketball. The game is tight, and you are a star, and you miss 13 free throws. People are going to come to you and look at you and be like, yo, you missed 13 free throws.
Then ask if that game was a failure.
Okay, but we just talked
you
about
get
that.
what I'm saying.
Totally,
The specific game, because I don't think it's fair to judge Giannis based when he couldn't even go.
But you're not judging him. He's asking about the team and what the team's expectations
Yeah,
were.
but it automatically comes back to the leader of the
Giannis.
team.
Of course.
And any headline,
But you have to ask him.
And you always
You have
talk
to ask
about,
every-
what do you always tell me about a back?
What?
When we talk injuries, like
But-
what's the worst? A back.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, what I'm telling you is this. We're in different professions. And he asked the question, well, our success or failure is based on what the expectations were prior to Judgment Day. So if we are sitting there, we're sitting up there, we've been blessed and fortunate. God has blessed us. We've been blessed and fortunate enough to be number 1 for 11 plus years.
If you're not number 1, is this show a failure?
Let me tell you something. If I'm not number 1, I would feel like it's a failure.
Yeah, but
I'm
you're
out.
wrong.
No.
You're wrong.
Not a good analogy.
You were wrong.
Not
Yeah.
a good analogy.
You know that, right? You were wrong.
Not a good analogy. Look
If
at
you're
me.
not number 1
Hold on.
every single
Hold on.
year, SA,
Not a
that
good
is not a
analogy.
failure.
Okay, that's fair. If you're here, if you're not here, you had that COVID scare. If you're gone for 6 months, and then we say, hey, Stephen A., show's not one we're filming. It's not apples to apples. He was not there.
No.
11 minutes and then gone 2 games.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he was there the last 2 games. Jimmy Butler scored 98 points in 2 games. So when they're looking at it, they're asking the question and answer your
Can I
question.
just say one last
Yeah.
thing?
Go ahead.
Here's one of the things I commend about him.
Right.
If you were to say this season is a failure, that's something that he's calling out his teammates and his coach.
Right.
It's not who he is
That's
as a
fair.
player.
That's fair.
And at the end of the day, I really respect him
I
putting
respect
a
the hell out of
over
him.
his team and his
everything
franchise.
he said there.
Exactly.
I respect the hell out of him. I get where he's coming from. I'm just talking about in the regular season, he's absolutely right. In the context of the postseason, I don't believe he is right about that because I'm saying it's about how you feel. I didn't sit up there and say I would be right. What I said to you is that if I'm accustomed to being number one, the moment I'm not number one, would I feel like I'm failing?
No.
Yes.
I would feel that way.
But if you weren't
That's all I'm
actually
saying.
here,
I said me.
if you weren't
I didn't say
actually
this show.
on
I
the
said
show,
me.
and it's a backup team, it's hard for you. Coming up, and you know
I
I'm
would
right.
feel that way.
Just admit that I'm right. Can you say I'm right?
Do you know I would feel that
I'm
way?
right. Coming up.
You would
Do you
feel
know
that
I
way
feel
doesn't mean you are.
I said that.
All right, so we got to talk about your Knicks.
clarifying.
We're going to talk about your
Again?
Knicks coming up. Yeah. This show's 2 hours. We haven't talked about it in a while.